now let's talk about another experiment. And this experiment is where a little boy and a chimpanzee were paired together. Now, one experiment that you cannot do is you can't put a toddler and have him raised by wolves, or you can't have a toddler raised by a family of chimpanzees. So this experimenter decided, what if I put a chimpanzee with a little boy and I try to get him to be a human or get him to have human-like tendencies? So the experiment was done to see, well, how far can this experiment go if we grab a little chimpanzee and we put him with a boy and we try to get him to be human-like. So this experiment is called the Kellogg experiment, and it's where a baby was paired with a monkey. So, this little monkey and this little boy were hanging out together, and the little boy was named Donald, and the chimpanzee was named Gua, and so they were hanging out together, and the experiment was going fairly well, where they were trying to get this little chimpanzee to be, kind of human-like, and ultimately what happened was they had to stop the experiment. Now, why do you think they had to stop the experiment where this little chimpanzee was raised with a boy? What happened was the little boy started to act like a chimpanzee. So it was supposed to be an experiment on the chimpanzee, but it ended up being an experiment on the little boy. And that shows us the power of influence. So you may want to write that down. Why was the experiment stopped? Because the little boy started to act like a monkey. Interesting. Here's a little fun fact I want to show you. So these are two twin brothers, and they didn't meet until they were already in their 30s. So they were raised by different families. Now, even though they were raised by different families, here are some of the things that they had in common. Both of them had a dog named Toy. Both of them would bite their nails. Both of them suffered from migraines, and both of them were divorced. And the woman's name was Linda for both individuals. And then they kept talking as they were meeting and finding out about each other. Remember, they didn't meet until they were in their 30s, and they were raised apart. They both got remarried, and the woman's name was Betty for both guys. They both had a son. One of them named his son James Allen. The other named his son James Allen. Both of them smoked Salem. Both of them drank Miller Lite. Both of them liked stock car racing, and both of them disliked baseball. And they kept talking as they met, and they were trying to find out all of the things that they had in common. And both of them would leave love notes for their wife around the house. And both of them would work on furniture that is very small. And both of them had the same idea. They made a circular bench around the tree in the backyard. And when they would go on vacation, they vacationed in Florida at the same beach. Now, are all of these things an argument for nature, or are all of these things an argument for nurture? All of these things are an argument for nature, because they were raised in different homes, but look at all of the things that they had in common. This is an argument for nature, not nurture. It is a very interesting story. However, there have been twins that were raised apart, and they didn't have all of these things in common. However, this is a very interesting story. All right, let's write down George Herbert Mead and role taking. One of the things that has been discovered is that as we go through the process of socialization, we go through a very similar pattern. And the very first stage of being socialized is number one, we all go through the preparatory stage and children imitate the significant other. Now, if you think about why doesn't it say children imitate the parent? It says significant other. The reason it says significant other because yes, usually it's the parent. That's true, usually. But it could be an aunt, it could be a grandmother, or in the case of the Kellogg experiment, it could be a chimpanzee. Now, yes, most of the time it's a parent. But, in some cases, in extreme cases, it could be an animal or a distant relative that's raising the child. That's why it says significant other. All right, that's number one. Stage 2. It's called the play stage, and this is where children take the roles of their heroes and idols. And some of you might remember this stage. When you were very young, did you dress up as a Power Ranger? Or maybe Batman? Or maybe you dressed up as Belle or Ariel? Stage 2 is where kids start dressing like their heroes or idols. And so stage 1 is we imitate whoever is important in our life. Stage 2 is we start playing and taking the roles of our heroes. And maybe we will even fight Lord Zed if we have to. Here's a picture that I thought was pretty good. It says, I laughed harder than I should have. It says, going to Olive Garden. I think she meant the Olive Garden. But if you notice, hey, she's taking a picture of herself. She's got her purse. She's got her hand on her hip. She's copying her mom or her aunt or her sister. She's copying somebody. So she's already going through the process of being socialized. All right, now let's talk about stage 3. So we said there's stage 1, significant other, stage 2, heroes or idols, and then there's stage 3. And this is where we learn multiple roles. That we could do a lot of things. We can't, we don't have to just be a Power Ranger or just be Ariel. We learn that we could do different roles. Like we could be a first baseman or be an outfielder or whatever the thing is, whatever the game is. Now, if you notice this picture, these kids are a little bit too little. Now, they're probably still in the Power Ranger stage. Sometimes when kids are put in stage 3 and their brain is still in stage 2, they don't fully comprehend and they start playing and they start rolling on the grass and they're not even looking at the ball. Many times adults put kids in stage 3 when their brain is still in stage 2, and I'm sure some of you have seen that where the kids are very little and they're not even really paying attention, and that happens sometimes. How do we get a sense of ourselves? So I've told you about the 3 stages of socialization, and then there's another stage that kind of completes the process. It's called Cooley's Looking Glass Self. And what that means is we get a sense of ourself. It develops from our interaction with others. And what that means is when we start to hang out with other people, we begin to see that, oh, well, I'm the one that's the funniest, or I'm the one that runs the fastest, or I'm the one that's the best drawer, or I'm the one that gets the best grades, or I'm the one that is the best at running fast, or whatever the thing is. As we hang out with others, we get a sense of who we are by the response we get from other people and the interaction with other people. And that shapes our attitudes about ourselves. Now, hopefully, as we interact with others, we're getting a good response and not a bad response, because the bad response could hurt if people tell you that you're uncool or unpopular or whatever the thing is. Here's a quote. And what happened, a quick story for those of you that ever watched Hannah Montana. There was a character named Aunt Dolly, or you might know of Dolly Parton. But when she was a little girl, she was given a coat, and it was made up of different rags. And those different rags, uh, was a poor coat made by a poor family. But in her brain, she thought it looked great. But all the other kids reminded her, they made fun of her. They said, "Ha, you're very poor. Look at that coat. Who wears a coat like that?" So her self-esteem was very high, but when she went out to hang out with her schoolmates, they reminded her, "You're poor." And of course it hurt. It devastated her. Here's a young man. He went to a university and he had a scholarship. He had a music scholarship, and so he was very, very proud of himself. And his self-esteem was very, very high. However, what happened was his dorm mate found out that this gentleman was going to have his boyfriend over. And so his dorm mate decided to do a live stream when his boyfriend came over on Saturday night on Twitter. Now, what happened was, of course, when he found out, he was devastated. And his self-esteem went from very, very high. Here he is, a gentleman who is getting a scholarship because of his musical ability. His dorm roommate ruined his self-esteem. So by interacting with others, we could be very, very hurt. Or if we hang out with other people, it could increase our self-esteem. The looking glass self. How my mom and dad see me, right? They see us as hopefully good. How my girlfriend sees me, and there's muscles. How my older brother sees me, saggy muscles. How my ex-girlfriend sees me. So by interacting with all these people, we begin to get a sense of who we are. What matters most is how you see yourself, which is true. Hopefully, we're not getting negative messages from the outside, which could hurt and maybe ruin our self-esteem.